Welcome back to another episode of Adeptus Paternus. I have with me Pat Kilcommons, and if he looks a little familiar, that's because I had his twin brother John on here to talk about Tau. How you doing, Pat?
Great, I'm excited to be here, even though I'm the second Kilcommons on.
That's all right. You're still the first in my heart.
Thanks.
I was thinking about it earlier today, and it's kind of funny how the two of you went with literally polar opposite armies. You know,
hmm
John going with the shooting and you going with the melee.
Yeah, yeah. I started off with Blood Angels in fifth edition, and then I came back in ninth, and Sisters of Battle caught my eye with the Bloody Rose Detachment, and I
Mm-hmm.
started playing them in tenth edition, and realized the reason I liked them was because it was the Bloody Rose Detachment. So I was like, hey, if I'm gonna go all melee all the way, there's only one codex for me. I know exactly which one it is. So.
Yep.
Um, I haven't played a single game with any other army since.
Well, and if you haven't caught on, that army is World Eaters, and we're here to talk about their Grotmas detachment. Maybe a little delayed, but that's all right. You've had some time to think about it. Have you gotten some games in?
Yeah, I've gotten three games in.
Oh, perfect.
Um, yeah,
So this isn't just speculation. This is some experience speaking.
exactly. It is some experience, although I think there's a much heavier learning curve for this detachment than Berserker Warband, just because Berserker Warband is just more raw power than anything.
Sure. Well, let's get into it. The detachment is Vessels of Wrath, which I mean, some of the Grotmas names kind of tell you what's going on. Honestly, with World Eaters, it's just variations on a theme.
Yeah.
The detachment rule is Wrath of not Khan, but Korn. And at the start of the battle round, after you've activated your blessings, which is nice that you have the knowledge after, you can select one or more models from your army from those listed below, including models that are embarked within transports. It's nice that they specify that. Either a World Eater's character, excluding epic heroes, an 8-bound champion, so basically the sergeant, Exalted 8-bound champion, Corn Berserker champion, or World Eater's Terminator champion. You can select the same type of model multiple times. The maximum number of models you can select depends on the battle size, and for 2,000 points, it's 3 models. Until the end of the battle round, each of those models has the Vessel of Wrath keyword. Then you select one Blessing of Corn that is not currently active for your army. Until the end of the battle round, that Blessing of Corn is active for Vessel of Wrath units from your army, in addition to any others that are active for your army.
It's good. It's reliable. That's what you were missing. And we've
Yep.
talked about it so many times. We played more than a few games where I have all of my models lined up to hit a charge with the advance. I'm within threat range to hit five or six of them and cripple something, and you don't roll it. And, you get icon rerolls, and it's a 50-50. It's a toss up. So for just that being the rule, it's a really strong one, especially when you can decide which ones they are, because
Yes.
it's going to be important to be able to say, hey, I don't think these three units are going to get in, or these two units are going to get in. So I don't even need to throw buffs on them. To me, it really helps early game and late game. Because early game, if I have five berserkers and I need them to go take out scouts, I just pick them and they go. And late game, I have four units left, and you know maybe we're fighting over the center. I need to get somebody onto a point, and I need the +2 move so I can do an action.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, to me, it makes those situations, they punch a lot harder. There's a lot more efficiency that you can get out of it. Of course, you're losing the raw killing power, but in my opinion, um, world eaters usually way overkill stuff. So
Right.
you
Yeah.
know
That's never been the issue. It's connecting.
exactly.
And I mean, sometimes though you do need that extra boost. And I remember all these situations where like, do I want sustained? Or what blessing am I going to pick? And now you can be greedy, and you can pick both.
hmm
I mean,
hmm
you're not running with a lot of units anyway. 3 units is actually a fairly significant amount of your force that is going to be in I mean, it could be 100% of things that are in melee in a given turn anyway. So,
Yeah, and a lot of the a good amount of the list I've seen and some of the ones I've run before, it's 1,000 points to your army. It's
exactly.
Karn plus 10 berserkers plus a rhino. It's 320 points. 2 units of exalted. That's 310 each. 940 points.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So
So yeah,
um,
I mean, so far so good, and having that control too. I mean, it, I mean, it was one thing that we mentioned briefly on the tier list when we were just talking about the creations of bile. That random buffs are never ideal, and so now, I mean, you still have some level of randomness in your buffs because of the blessings, but at least you have some level of control, and just smoothing it all out goes such a long way.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. Especially when it's one of the most frustrating as a World Eaters player. It's absolutely the most frustrating situation to happen. I
Mm-hmm.
don't get frustrated if Angron doesn't come back. That's just a wow. This just turned it could have been a 70-30 game in my favor to I'm definitely winning, or it's 30-70 and now it's a 50-50 chance to win. But you don't necessarily rely on that to come back in a game. You hope it's going to happen, but really what you rely on is getting advanced and charge on your go turn. And when that doesn't
Absolutely.
happen, it's completely soul crushing.
Yep. So let's move on to the enhancements. I'll read them all out, and then we'll discuss them as a group. The first one is Arc Slaughterer for 25 points. World Eaters model only. Improve the AP characteristic of melee weapons by the bearer by 1. While the bearer is a Vessel of Wrath, improve the damage characteristic of those weapons by 1. Next is the Vox Diabolus for 20 points. Again, World Eaters model. Basically anything, right? Each time the bearer's unit destroys an enemy unit with a melee attack, roll 1d6, adding 1 to the result. If the bearer is a Vessel of Wrath on a 4-up or 3-up, really, you gain a CP. Avenger's Crown for 15 points, World Eaters model. If the bearer is destroyed by... so, Fight on Death on a 2-up, but it is just the bearer, not the unit. Finally, the Gateways to Glory. Either a World Eater's Demon Prince or a World Eater's Mounted model only. Each time the bearer makes a normal advance or charge move, it can move horizontally through models and terrain features. While doing so, it can move within engagement range of such models, but cannot end within engagement range. So, seems like a pretty good sweep, but what are your favorites?
My favorite is definitely the Arch Slaughter.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think it's viable on just about anything. Um, with the Master of Executions, though, I've tried it out and it's really sad. When you drop from 7 attacks, you get the +1 attack from the Berserker Glaive, you get +1 attack on the charge, 7 attacks, rerolling everything, AP2 Dev Wounds to 5 attacks, AP3, 3 damage. AP3 is nice, but you don't really necessarily get the amount of Dev Wounds that you're looking for because realistically, if you're going to do the law of averages, you're going to get 2 Dev Wounds through on 7 attacks if you're rerolling everything. You're going to kill a character that's 6 or less wounds, and then you're going to toss the rest of the wounds on the rest of the squad and call it a day. But if you're running Arc Slaughter, there's a chance you don't. And then,
mm-hmm.
maybe the character is a 4 pinball and the rest of the unit doesn't. So it makes things a little more awkward. But the Lord on Juggernaut is where this one really shines because it jumps him from AP1, which honestly made him a throwaway unit and something that
Right.
wasn't worth considering, to AP2 damage 3, and he gets the extra damage on his additional extra attacks. So it gives him the 11 AP2 damage 3 attacks. The extra attacks have Lance, so he's wounding on twos with those most of the time into infantry. I haven't had the opportunity to put him into his perfect target, his perfect prey, but I would absolutely love to see him, hit some like Eradicators or something like that.
Yeah,
And just mulch
yeah.
up a unit of 6 or something.
Our
Like nothing would make me happier. It's
Custodes,
130
Terminators.
points or something. Yeah, exactly. And just say, are you going to pop your Feel No Pain for a 130 point model? You know,
You kind of have to.
um,
With that many
yeah,
attacks, you kind of
exactly.
have to.
Yeah, exactly. Uh, and
Yeah.
the other two that do come up is, the Demon Princes are. I think it's cute to have it on the Demon Prince, but really, you want the walkthrough balls enhancement on the big boy Demon Prince. He's going to be in the vast majority of the lists in this army for reasons we'll get to later.
Mm-hmm.
But um, you're going to want him hiding behind a wall, and you're going to want to push him out late game and just bully stuff that isn't going to be able to kill him. And you don't need damage 4 to try to do that. He's not an Exalted Ape Bound or an Angron. Don't try to make him one. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you're playing that way, you want him to give your units invols and, you know, be an opportunity. If you get lucky, he'll swing hard, but really realistically, he's like a worse Bellicor, and his melee, it's like you have 6 attacks, you hit on twos, you drop one or two, you win on twos or threes, you drop one or two, you hand them 2 or 3 saves, they pass one, maybe two. And you're
Yeah,
like 1 damage 4 wound going through. It really becomes underwhelming.
I totally get it. I, you know, yeah, about the other two that you're less excited about, I think I agree with you. The Vox Diabolus, if it was, if you have killed a model that phase on a 4-up, you gain a CP, or if you kill a unit and you gain a CP, but the combination of those, I mean, you could just be playing, an army where, like a stat check army like mine, where it's
Yeah.
like how many times are you killing a unit? Not enough. Like not enough to trigger
Yeah.
this. Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously, if you're going into something that's MSU, then you might. But I mean, realistically, you're not killing like more than one. Maybe you're killing 3 units in a game in a very good game for whatever this character is. So you're getting one and a
Yeah.
half CP out of it. Not worth it. And then,
Yeah. I agree. I really wish that I mean, ethereals, grots, there's so many mechanics in the game where it's just like the rule of the unit is to 4-up get a CP. It's like you're
or
really
just
having to
get a
jump through a lot of
CP.
hoops. Yeah, or just get a CP. You're really just jumping through a ton of hoops to get that CP.
Yeah,
And it's if you have extra points laying around, why not? But I definitely
sure.
wouldn't.
Honestly, and then between the two, though, I would probably, if I just had the extra points, I'd probably just take the Avengers Crown because
Hmm.
that's more likely to actually make a big difference. I mean, fighting up. I mean, it's sad that it's only the model, but the characters that it could go on are tough enough that if you do get a fight on death, I mean, that's nice. And 2-up is almost
Yeah.
guaranteed, so I would put that in
Yeah.
the, if you have the points category.
Yeah, exactly. And it the sad part is it probably won't make it on the table unless points allow, just because of the redundancy with Karn. Like Karn's fight on death is really strong. He has 8 attacks. He's got a lot going for him, and it's automatic. So, and he's somebody you're going to see in this detachment. He puts in absolute work with
Mm-hmm.
the rerolls, and he becomes a little less. He's one of the units that they can rely on themselves a bit more than, say, a unit that wants one of the strats that we'll be talking about,
Right.
and one of the offensive strats.
Yeah. I know it is actually really nice that you can empower, vesselize non-characters with the sergeants that makes such a difference. Otherwise, this would not work because you just don't have enough characters, which I think is part of the problem
Mm.
with the enhancements. You just don't have enough characters really to carry all of them.
Yeah,
Even if they're, good to, well, yeah, 3 of them are good to great. All right, let's get onto the strats though. The first one, Aspire to Infamy in the fight phase, Khorne Berserkers or Jackals unit that has not been selected to fight and is within 8 inches of one or more friendly character models. until the end of the phase. Improve the strength and AP characteristics of melee weapons equipped by non-character models in the unit by 1.
It's a little restrictive, but it is good in the new, you know, in the new meta of AOC.
Mm-hmm.
AOC has changed, so it is nice, just because you're guaranteeing if you're hitting with 8-bat with Exalted and with Berserkers that there's gonna be at least some AP on them. The character stipulation I find a little bit odd, to be
Yeah,
honest.
it's sort of funny that it's a character and not the vessel when almost everything
Yeah.
else has to do with the vessel. But maybe they forgot. Maybe it slipped their mind. Um,
Mm.
or some of these I think that they are trying a little hard to be cinematic. So like Aspire to
Mm.
Infinity, like you're trying to show off, I suppose, to a character. But +1 strength, +1 AP. Certainly, you can hit breakpoints, and
You definitely do. With the strength 5 to strength 6, that's a huge break point. Wounding anything on, T5 on threes or T4, T6 on fours, like that's it. It's a big deal.
or going from what would that be? I guess like a tank, a medium tank, T10 or T11. You're going from
Hmm.
sixes to fives. So you're doubling the
Yeah.
output there. Yeah, I mean, you're trying to coordinate your attack, your units anyway. You're not trying to spread them out super thin, so it's not like it's that hard to pull off.
Yeah. And I think it's really just going to be on the Karn unit, just because you have the rerolls innately.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll get more help out of it. It'll be more efficient. You'll get more wounds through. So that's where I see most people using it.
Yeah,
But as we'll see, a lot of these strats, just because you're so used to the amount of damage output that Berserker Warband comes with, you'll
mm-hmm.
just every time that you are in a fight, you're like, I want to hammer these strats. I want to hammer every single one.
Yeah,
Uh, I want to double up and use 2 a turn, and so I think that's part of the learning curve for a lot of people is like, hey, okay, we need to figure out a way that I'm not spending 2 CP in your turn and my turn every single turn because
sure.
it's not possible to pull it off.
No. And honestly, like, I think it is worth remembering that you are still getting so most people would be perfectly happy with a 1 CP get sustained hits. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, essentially, if you were to roll, and you get your advance in charging, so you can put sustained on 3 squads, the 3 squads that need it the most. Like, that's already a huge damage buff. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that I don't think that this detachment is really lacking power either, even if it's not at the same level. But yeah,
Yeah.
uh, overshadowed by none. Fight phase. Infantry, mounted, or demon prince. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit makes an attack that targets a monster or vehicle, you can re-roll the wound roll. So this is instead of getting +1 to wound for anybody.
Really good.
It's
This
it's
is one of the strats that people are gonna want to use every single turn. The Although to be fair, monster and vehicle is a lot more restrictive than +1 to wound and Berserker Warband, which is against character
characters.
units.
Yeah,
Which, when you add that into the mix, you're talking about at least 50 to 75% of somebody's army. I would say most of the time, uh,
yeah,
but again, extremely strong.
yeah. I mean, there are cases. Obviously, it's very dependent on the profiles, what the dice rolls are, but generally speaking, on these particular units, infantry, mounted, and the demon prince, like who don't have super high strength weapons, reroll wounds is actually statistically better than +1 to wound on high
Mm-hmm.
toughness things. So yeah, I mean, then there's nothing that says that you can't combine this with the previous one if you really needed to take something out. If you get a break point or you need that extra AP, But if you're going from wounding on fives to wounding on fours, or even sixes to fives and re-rolling wounds like that, it's not insignificant.
Hmm.
Yeah. All right, next one. Gory Dedication. Fight phase. Just after a World Leader's unit from your army is fought, if one or more enemy models, this time models, were destroyed as a result of those attacks, the target is the World Leader's unit. Select one objective. So this is the new sticky. So it's a slightly
Hmm.
harder to achieve sticky. I think slightly less useful sticky that you have to kill
It is a
something.
slightly
Yeah.
it's slightly less useful. Just the times I've used it, it's usually when there's like a couple models on an objective early game, and I go for it because why not? But I was playing John Tau, and the new Tau detachment allows you, if you're in engagement range, to make a normal move up to your
Mm-hmm.
movement characteristic. And so if you use that strat and you didn't kill his whole unit, and let's say it's Kroot that are plus one OC now, and each Kroot model is three OC each, and then he just makes a normal move back onto the objective, right where I stickied it. He could easily take it away from me. And again, World Eaters are an army that has very high OC. There's very little access to it. Of course, this is a great detachment for it because I would think that you're running at least 15 to 20 berserkers, but I don't see it being as effective as shooting somebody off of an objective and sticking it. It's so much stronger.
Yeah, that is because that's the natural progression of things, right? I mean, that's what just happens during a game against World Eaters is you shoot something off an objective. And the thing about that particular timing is if you haven't been careful enough to, like, say, move something onto the objective before you shot, you often don't even have a chance to charge onto the objective either. And so that strat is almost like guaranteeing at least 5 points, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And if not,
And
hold it. Yeah,
if not, it's guaranteeing a commitment for you to put something right in front of me to stop that
exactly.
from happening.
Exactly. And
You
then,
know, and
yeah, and then there's a
I'm
risk
not mad
too.
about that ever.
Yeah, there's a risk too because what if I don't successfully kill you? What if the thing that I put right in front of you? What if it's berserkers who could like blood surge into the thing that I just put on the objective? So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't think that you should complain about having access to sticky. It just is clearly not as good as the, other version of it.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
of
that's
course,
when I
yeah,
absolutely rely on heavily. Right?
yeah,
Is I can stand on the open and not be afraid you're going to shoot me off the first spawn, for example, or jackals. Jackals have sticky innately, so that they're even better because a lot of times, unless they have a reason to. I mean, jackals, you just blow on them, they fall over. But I think spawn especially, right? It's you have
mm-hmm,
to get through 16 wounds basically because they have a forward feel no pain, and it's like you go through all this commitment to try to kill some spawn for me to sticky the objective, and
yeah,
that's the exact situation I want every opponent to be in. Is they're just wailing away, and half of their army is activating into the spawn, and they end up killing him and I sticky it immediately. You know,
yeah,
that's funny.
yeah. I mean, I think that this is useful in the cases that you're describing of because not everybody is auxiliary cadre Tau with crazy tricks and stuff, and
Yeah,
not
exactly.
everybody's Eldar with Phantasm. But the idea that you can use a skirmisher that because your skirmishers are going to kill most other people's skirmishers, and if you're skirmishing on an objective to then sticky it, it does require that they actually commit more to it. And maybe, the other thing is like, I actually think that this is going to be most useful. It doesn't mean that you don't do it early game, but I actually think it's most useful maybe late game where you're down to fewer things. Maybe it's round 4 and you only have a few assets left. And so you don't want to be babysitting an objective that you just took. You want to, make a clean sweep of it to make sure that they can't score some more secondaries or something and try and get back into the game. That's when I think you're probably going to want to use it the most. when it's going to be most valuable. So
Yeah,
I
that's a great point. I think the perfect situation is, the three-man exalted always having deep strike and them dropping in the back line, taking the home objective. I don't want them sitting there just
exactly.
holding the home objective. I want them to be, moving along, munching along, and that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. So in that from that perspective, I do think maybe I've come around to it a little bit more that it is still not quite as good as the other, but not as far away as I'd originally thought.
Yeah, having sticky still is nice, and we have access to jackals.
Yep.
My
Yep.
plan doesn't. The way that my plan will always work is, I'm going to scout jackals up to my expansion objective, and I want that sticky turn too, and that doesn't matter. Usually, that doesn't matter whether I have that strat or not.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
the other ones, it'll come if it comes up once in a game, perfect.
Cool.
But it's going to be a niche strat.
Yeah. All right. Punish the Craven. Your opponent's movement phase after an enemy unit excluding monsters and vehicles is selected to fall back. One World Eater's infantry or World Eater's Demon Prince unit from your army within engagement range. When that unit falls back, all models must take a Desperate Escape test. If doing, when doing so, if your unit is a Vessel of Wrath unit, subtract 1 from those tests. It is funny that they learned their lesson from I think it was Bully Boys, where they didn't exclude monsters and vehicles. So like Canis
Yeah,
Rex could theoretically fall back from some, you know, Mega Knobs and then potentially die because you rolled
uh,
a 1 to 3, right? Because it's a 50% chance at that point. So no, it's not that, but you know, 50% chance of or basically them losing half their squad.
yeah.
That's not
It's not
bad.
terrible for a CP. That's pretty good for a CP.
Yeah, I mean I could definitely see, if it's like Tau, you just manage to consolidate into some breachers and they don't want to be there because then they can't shoot at you and they can't shoot in combat and they're going to die. So they try and fall back and oops, you lost half of them for 1 CP. Absolutely
Yeah,
great.
it's absolutely worth it.
I mean, I would say that even if it isn't a Vessel of Wrath unit, it's often probably worth it just because you're making them think about it. Even if they
Yeah,
don't end up doing it, you're like, hey, I could spend it on this. Are you sure you want to fall back? And maybe they don't. They should. They still should. Better to lose
yeah,
half.
they should.
But
Well,
yeah,
what if they can't? If you're running the Exalted bricks and you have to pass the leadership test to fall back, that is where this gets really, really fun
well,
because
that
every unit that can fall back, you know, they can be, you can toss a CP on them. This is a conversation that has come up in the World Eaters discords, though, just because of the timing of the interaction with the leadership test
I'm
and then also the strat. So I'm sure
yeah.
that a TO will go over it, but my assumption would be that you pay the strat after the unit successfully falls back because it has to do
Um
with what's selected versus successfully and
well, so yeah, it the way that it's written for Exalted 8-bound is that it is when a unit is selected to fall back, they take the test. Now, this is just after, meaning that they could have failed and they can't fall back anyway, and you can pop this, and they still have to take a Desperate Escape test. Oh no, it does say when that unit falls back, so you'll know whether they passed or not. So you could,
Mhm.
so if it's in the yeah, I don't know that you necessarily need to double up in those circumstances, but maybe, but it is the
It's
case.
part of yeah, it's part of one of the only things about this detachment that bothers me a little bit is how some of the rules just you can get them in other places. We already have a way to stop people from falling back
Right.
or influencing that. For the blood surge, we already have blood surge on the Berserker's data sheet. For reroll wounds, we already have that on the 8-bound aura. So it's like, should I be bringing more 8-bound because they'll give me reroll one to wound plus,
Yeah.
reroll all wounds if you're below half. It is nice to have that, but I don't think that rules it out by any means because again, rerolling all wounds on demand, that's always going to be extremely strong. And you need to be thinking about, your threat saturation. And, it happened in the game that we last played where I didn't have a unit of 8 pounds near Angron when I went +1 to wound. And it, throws it might be possible for me to kill the Silent King to it's definitely not possible for me to kill the Silent King.
Yeah. I
Uh,
think that
so
it's not the end of the world simply because it means that you're not like so beholden to taking exalted and a bound like, you know, a ton in every list.
droves.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can. This does give you the flexibility to. I mean, you still can take them because they can give you the buffs in places where in some places, so you don't have to spend the CP, and then where they're not nearby, you can spend the CP. Um, I think that it's not a bad thing to have that optionality. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Meet force with force. Your opponent's shooting phase just after they've shot. One World Eater's infantry, mounted, or demon prince that lost one or more wounds as a result of those attacks. You can make a blood surge move. Is it any different? Yes, if you are a Vessel of Wrath, you can re-roll the d6.
Which is nice.
Yeah,
And it does the synergies do work together too though, right? Like you can have 30 berserkers and you can have 1 unit of exalted 8 pound, right? And then you're just gonna tell them everything is blood surging.
right.
And if it's
Absolutely.
the exalted brick, I get to re-roll it.
Yep.
Um, you know, good luck getting out of this. And then when I touch you, you're not going to be able to fall back. And if you do fall back, you're losing half of your unit, unless it's of course a monster vehicle. But if you get half of your units, if you put 4 units, say it's 20 berserkers, 25 berserkers, 30 berserkers, and a unit of 6 exalted, and 2 of those units are able to stay in combat through their turn, and you're able to kill, you know, maybe it's just a dreadnought and intercessors, but doing that in their turn and then being right in front of them and then saying, "Hey, I'm going to do it again." Here, the train is going to keep on rolling. It's a crazy, crazy combination.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, Blood Surge is, even after the nerf, maybe one of the single most powerful mechanics in the game, in my opinion.
mhm.
It requires so much planning to deal with that, because you also have to always assume that if you're the one who's facing the potential blood surge, you have to assume that they're going to roll a 6. You have to
Mhm.
stay outside of 6 if you don't want to be in engagement range. I mean, you have to stay 7 inches away, right? um
Mhm.
and guess what, like, that's essentially the width of range of an objective. It it's rough. I think that
It can get oppressive.
it can
It
get.
can get oppressive
Yeah.
for sure.
And the other thing is, like, maybe you've very carefully pre-measured threat distances, and oops, no, actually it's a lot closer now, and I just shortened their charge by d6. Essentially now they get a 3d6 charge because of that. I mean, yeah, they lost a few models, but like, if you can't clean them up, if this is, you know and there are ways to play around it, but it just, you then have to play around it. And like, I think, we were talking about how, yeah, there's overlap, but at the same time it's not a bad thing, because now, I mean, you're getting reroll wounds on things outside of the range of the exalted, and you're getting uh, a blood surge move on things that aren't berserkers. Everything gets
Yeah.
everything, and that's kind of cool too.
Yeah. And they kill, an exalted kill way harder than berserkers. It's
Yes,
nice.
yes,
It's nice when you blood surge in and Berserker Glaive Mo when he gets a blood surge. I pity whoever walked into that willingly, but that's a blender and you will die. But for normal Berserkers, it's nice, but you're not gonna kill a Satan, um, but 6 exalted, you know they might kill a Satan.
yeah.
It's definitely harder, but you know what I mean. They can kill a tank. They
They can
can
kill big stuff
they
for
can blood
sure.
surge. And uh, you make a really good point though. There's a certain and it happened in one of the games I played, but there's a certain point to where you, as the opponent, look at your side of the board, and if I get turn one, if you start pre-measuring, you just realize I actually have to take the chances because otherwise, he's I will just pin myself in my deployment zone, continuing to measuring backward the
Yeah.
threat ranges and the blood surges until I'm in a little pocket in the back of my deployment zone, and so you just have to take that chance. And it happened in one of the games. Pearl with six on the blood surge. He gave me the six. Needed to get close. He had a unit of six rampagers standing right in front of me, and they wanted to charge me. Another amazing thing about the list that have mixed melee, they don't want to get close because if they want to also shoot you, because then you're going to blood surge to them and take out their melee unit that they were just about to threaten you with. But I took out the three rampagers. I walked right into it. I took out the three rampagers in his turn, and then the unit that was trying to shoot me, I walked right into them and took them out too. And then I just completely collapsed the flank, and that's just that is it feels bad, and that's part of like this. We've already seen it with the Space Wolves mechanics and stuff. But one thing I did want to call out too, just to talk chat briefly about it, is the inclusion of mounted in these stratagems
Yeah.
because some of the some of the you know some of the conversations going around the world eaters community, of course, is why would you earmark that in a stratagem when there's only
Mm-hmm.
two characters that are benefiting that stratagem, right? So I think world eaters, wolf jail might happen. I would like if it was. We'll see what happens, but I hope it's more unique than the the more just slog and I'm blood surging into you and I'm advancing and charging and I
Yeah.
have four pinballs and good luck. You have one turn to try to kill half the army that's standing right in front of you.
We'll see. I haven't faced Wolfjail in a little while. It's not as bad as when I first played into it last March when like Wolfen could action. That was
Yeah.
that was oppressive because like I couldn't kill both. Like I killed all the Thunderwolves, but then the Wolfen were still alive. But anyway, yeah, I do. There does seem the scuttlebutt does seem to be the next kit that you'll be getting will actually be some dudes on juggernauts. I mean, hopefully.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's get to the last one. Brazen Contempt. Your opponent's shooting phase. Just after an enemy has selected its targets, one World Eater's unit from your army that was selected as the target until the end of the phase. Each time, if the strength is greater than your toughness, subtract one from the wound roll. Or if it's a. Wait, what? Oh, I get it. Or if it's a Vessel of Wrath unit, subtract one from the wound roll instead, so that you don't have the stipulation that the strength has to be greater than the toughness. That's kind of nice that there are
It's
cases
really
where you could
nice.
just, if I'm trying to think, like let's say it's bolters, and they're wounding you on fives, and now they're wounding you on sixes, but sometimes 40 bolter shots could still do some damage. So if you can half that, great. That's pretty cool. -1 to be wounded is a nice defensive mechanic for sure.
Especially when it's a unit of six exalted eight bound and they have a demon prince nearby giving them a four up invul and they have a five up feel no pain active and they can blood surge.
Yeah.
It starts getting, originally I thought, and I still am going to try to play this detachment extremely berserker heavy. I just picked up 20 more berserkers, so I now have 50. So who knows? Maybe I'll pull a game out with 60 of them for fun and see what happens. But I think that the berserkers are where this detachment will shine. You're going to need some extra AP units, so I there will be exalted
You still
and
have to.
higher AP
Yeah.
units in that. You have to, right? Um, but this is one of those strats. Every time I see it, I'm like, I want to use this every single turn. I'm gonna get shot after it's my go turn. I want to use it every single turn, and so uh, finding trying to find the times when I should use it and when I should save it, right? And I think that comes back to trying to learn Vessels of Wrath all over again. I have a good
Yeah.
idea in my head of where what should kill something, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've just played enough games where I'm like, okay, three exalted, they should more often than not kill a war dog in melee without any real buff. They should get there. You're putting them on a six up save. On average, I'm getting around like 8 or 9 wounds through. They should fail six, and that should kill them, right? But for vessels, I just don't have the reps to really
Sure.
to just be able to eyeball it. The math behind it is, uh, I just need to relearn it. It's like learning, a completely different army because, it turns out six exalted can do one damage to the Silent King sometimes.
Yep.
uh,
Yeah. I think. I mean, I have not played World Eaters, but I've played into World Eaters quite a bit. To me, the one strat that like I am glad to see not in, like, if I were facing this, I'd be like, oh well, thank goodness they don't have the strat from Berserker Warband, is actually the flat six advance.
mhm,
And just be, yeah, okay, you can advance and charge more consistently, but you can't advance as consistently. And so that's a bit of a bummer. On the other hand, there's a bunch of stuff in here that, like, I don't like the idea of blood surging exalted 8-bound that are -1 to be wounded and potentially, re-rolling all wounds regardless of whether they're supported or not. Like, yeah, that's a 3 CP combination, but it's not like you're spending CP on turn 1 anyway. So, like,
mhm.
on your go turn, you should have a decent amount of CP to do this stuff. I, it seems good to me. This all seems good to me. I think that, like,
Yeah.
I actually think that there's a higher skill level expression with this, and I think that there's already a very high skill level expression with world leaders in general. The way that Jack Harpster put it, which I thought was very good, is that people assume that the army where everything, like, you have a hammer, so every problem is a nail, that makes it somehow simple to play. No, it's more like you have to build a house and all you have is a hammer. That's a lot harder to
Mhm.
do. So I think that
And to prove your point too about some of the misconceptions about just World Eaters players, melee players in general. World Eaters is the quintessential, melee pressure army, of course. So I don't know how many times I've walked up to a table and I've had the opponent see what I do in turn one, which is not just push everything in their face, and been like, "What are you doing? Why aren't you charging me?" All you guys do. The first opponent I played at the last GT, he said, "Well, this is gonna be a short game," and we were on the clock to like the very last 2 minutes.
yeah.
I was like, I don't play like that.
No, I mean, nobody who's doing well with world leaders does. And similarly, I think that, like, with Hypercrypt, everybody always assumes that turn 1 I'm going to drop in their backfield, because Matt Laura did it at last LVO and, like, won. But generally speaking, it's actually a really bad idea. Like, why would I drop
Mm-hmm.
one? And for basically exactly the same reasons, why would I reach across the board? Even if it's an extremely powerful unit, it will not be a good trade. There is no way that I can get, the full 420 points of the Silent King if I just yeet him to the other side of the board. He'll kill one, maybe two things, and then he'll die because unsupported, anybody, literally anybody except for, I don't know, maybe Imperial agents or something, or like the new Nurgle detachment that does no damage, but like almost everybody else can kill him. Similarly, why would you just yeet 6 exalted 8-bound unsupported across the table to kill one thing and then die? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
I
well, I'm,
think to your point,
yeah.
to your original point though, I think this detachment definitely has legs, and I'm sad LVO is in like 2 weeks because I want to play it so bad, but I don't
Right.
want to do a disservice to myself and use the detachment that I'm not as familiar with, and a detachment I think needs a lot more reps than the Berserker Warband to get good
Yeah.
at. But
Absolutely.
it definitely has the reps. People are going to win tournaments with it. I guarantee it. Um, and I'm excited to see what people do. it is really fun to have a new flavor of World Eaters that's competitive. We absolutely got blessed in, by Father James, and you know, to your point about auto advancing six, I think it goes back to what you said about the Necrons of people dropping in their backline. That's why you get people when you play against them with Hypercrypt, where they're and I'm somebody who did this too in the past, where it's like I'm trying to zone the 3 inch deep strike out of my whole deployment zone, and it's like I'm using 8 bound to screen out my backfield, and you're like on your side of the fence, you're like that's ridiculous. I would never do that. But
Yeah,
on our
but
side of
go
the fence,
ahead.
it's
Go
like we
ahead.
don't
I'm happy
we
to see
don't
it.
yeah we don't want that even a possibility, right? And that's the same thing with auto advance six. It's like right, people see the measuring stick, and it's an education process. And the worst games that I've had playing as world leaders is, you know, the player just does not realize how easy it is for me to get to them. So it feels like making sure they're making the educated decision to put their whole army in front of me if that's what they're going to do, right? But for the folks who are do see it and they're like, "Whoa, that's like on my home objective."
Yep.
Yeah, Angron can get to my home objective turn one,
Yep.
and I'm probably not going to do it, but I could, you know, in my head, I could say, hey, I think the only way I win this matchup is that if I missile Angron and he kills something, and all of your army is forced to come out to deal with him,
Oh
and
yeah.
then I can hammer you, and maybe I get Angron back. I've got nine chances to get him back, 8 chances to get him back. And it's early on
That's
in the game. I'm going to have all of my icons sitting on objectives
that's a
and getting those rerolls.
very that's a very different calculation because you can
Yes, it
bring him
is.
back. I do not.
Yes.
I
Cannot bring,
reanimate, but
yeah.
I don't bring units back from the dead. So
Yeah, of course.
yeah, and it's also different when you can charge because then you actually get in engagement range as opposed to, I mean, 9 inches, much less like, 6 or 3's gone. It
Yeah.
doesn't happen anymore. But yeah, I'm looking forward to playing this, to playing against you, playing this. You'll be happy to know that I'm almost certainly not going to be playing Necrons after LVO. Uh,
Really? Death Watch?
Maybe we'll
Not
see.
to, you don't have to spoil it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And actually, I've said that almost certainly, but I could change my mind tomorrow. I've already, you've heard me complain about how I just get tired of running the same thing over and over and over again. We'll see.
Hmm.
But
Well, that'd be fun. Death Watch does look gross. I don't think it's going to, I
uh,
think you're still going to win games, Nick.
yeah. Oh no, I have no intention of just giving up and rolling over and losing.
Yeah, of course. I know. I know. I think you might even play better with Death Watch.
Oh, well, it's a very similar kind of thing. Uppy downy
Hmm.
big guns. It just
Yeah.
I got my style.
Just in Marine bodies, not in robot armor.
That's right. Well, thanks for coming to discuss this. I've been looking forward to this one, and like I said, looking forward to playing against it too. And I guess probably the next time I see you will be in Las Vegas, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Nick. I'll see you then.
Have a good night.